Hi guys, I'm writing a book and I need some feedback. I just want to know if it's any good, if you would give it a read. So here goes. Give me a few comments, let me know what you think, and thank you for watching. Guilty. The courtroom went from silent cheering, screaming, people crying, and shouting abuse. The court was old. Half the walls had old wood from the floor to the middle of the wall. The wood was a mahogany colour. It didn't match the courtroom at all. The walls held large painting pictures with gold leaf patterned frames. These showed off the judges that had been in the courtroom before and had opportunities of having their pictures hung as they posed gratefully. These whitewashed walls met a high ceiling. A jury of 12 people that knew they had made the right decision sat in their seats with nothing else to say, just plain looks on their faces, staring at the judge, awaiting his final words. To the left of them stood an empty witness box, where many had stood and given evidence, bearing their emotions and telling whole truth and nothing but the truth. To their right sat a brunette woman with big black framed glasses, which were obviously too big for her slim face. Through the trial, they had fallen down a few times, barely staying on her small, slim nose. She had freckles on both cheeks that her glasses hid well. No one in the courtroom would have noticed her there. If it wasn't for a huff and a pout, then a quick blow from her lips to flutter away her fringe from her eyes, she sat sketching away behind an easel, making sure she got every detail of the people around her, with her fingers going wild with multicoloured pencils to capture every possible moment and details of each whole stood or stand around her. Alongside her, a middle-aged man from the press sat typing as if he cared that his career depended on this story. He was suited and booted, a nice grey suit with a nicely folded white handkerchief in his pocket. Shiny shoes that must have just been polished that very morning. His face was shaven, his eyes squinted to try and read what he had written on his laptop. Every so often, he would play back bits from his dictaphone that he was not fast enough to catch. An emotional but well-dressed woman around 60 years old, with wrinkly and bony fingers clutching a hold of a man to her right, knitted cream-patterned cardigan as he tried to comfort her. The man's arms were wrapped tightly around the woman as her eyes uncomfortably flowed with tears, which rolled down her face, bringing all the mascara down with it that she had put on that morning. The tears splashed on her red blouse she was wearing. She let go of the man to bring a white tissue from her black trouser pocket. The man's arms that were cradling the lady rushed open so he could use the tissue in his hand to stop tears falling from his own eyes. Placing the tissue back into his pocket, lawyers standing next to him, the lawyer dressed in blue, pinned striped suit, shook the man's hand and then started collecting his paperwork from the old wooden desk in front of him, knowing he had just won the case. On the other side of the room stood another lawyer. He looked up to the dock where his client Shane Cole stood. Behind glass, Shane stared out at the crowd of people at the back of the court, some he had seen before, some who were new faces to him, others that just blended in. He could hear the wooden floor creaking as people moved around. "Order, order!" the judge shouted. He was wearing an off-white curly wig on his head. He was an old black man that had obviously spent most of his career get in the seat to sentence the guilty. His wrinkles could tell so many stories, and the stress of having to deal with the dreaded truth and the big decisions he would have to make at the end. The judge slammed the Golan down to get everyone's attention. Shane was situated at the front of the courtroom, to the judge's right, hidden away in a dark box that was taller but small.